They say powerful stories begin in the unlikeliest places, but no one in that billion-dollar boardroom expected this. A quiet janitor, ignored for years, suddenly placed his mop aside and stood tall. The CEO's pen froze mid-air. Executives stopped whispering, and an eerie silence filled the room. Because the truth this man was about to reveal wasn't small, it was explosive. A truth that would expose hidden corruption, save 4,722 hardworking families, and rewrite the fate of the company forever. And one knew that in the next 30 seconds, a janitor would become the bravest voice in the building. The boardroom fell into a stunned, breathless silence. Executives froze mid-whisper. The $4.2 billion contract lay open on the polished marble table, and Amara Sinclair, the iron-willed CEO, stopped mid-signature, the ink trembling at the tip of her pen. Because the person who had just spoken wasn't a lawyer, a director, or a shareholder. It was David Brown. The janitor, he stood at the far end of the room, his mop leaning quietly against the wall behind him. Outside the glass walls, cameras flashed wildly, reporters waiting for a historic corporate announcement. Inside, however, the only thing anyone could look at was him. David knew he had 60 seconds. 60 seconds to stop a disaster no one else had noticed. 60 seconds to save thousands of lives before the truth was buried forever. His breath shook as his mind flashed back to the night before. The empty hallways, the hum of vending machines, the soft echo of his footsteps as he worked his usual shift. He remembered the moment he passed the open conference room door and saw the documents left glowing on the screen. Point 4, 722 jobs terminated, including his own. The world blurred for a moment. His heart clenched as he thought of Naomi, his 8-year-old daughter, hooked to machines, the medical bills stacked like mountains at home. Losing his job meant losing her treatment, losing her chance. He stood in that hallway for a long time, shaking, invisible as always. But then a decision hit him like lightning that he couldn't just sweep floors tonight. He had to fight, even if it destroyed him. And now, standing in front of the most powerful people in the company, David Brown lifted his chin, eyes steady, for the first time in his life. They all finally saw him. For a moment, no one in the boardroom moved. Amara Sinclair, the CEO known for breaking competitors with a glance, lifted her pen, closed the $4.2 billion contract folder, and slowly looked up at David Brown. Her eyes narrowed, calculating. A single tap of her finger against the table signaled security to stay back. "Everyone," she said quietly, "out." The executives protested, but one glare from her silenced them. Chairs screeched, murmurs echoed, doors slammed. In less than 30 seconds, the room was empty. She turned to face him fully. "You have 1 minute," she said. "Talk." David swallowed hard. His hands trembled, but his eyes did not. "The financials you're about to sign," he said softly, "are manipulated." Amara froze, not visibly, but something shifted. A tiny, nearly invisible twitch in her jaw. David took a breath. "I know because I've seen numbers like these before, and because I used to write them." Silence. Amara leaned back slowly. "Explain." David's voice steadied as his courage rose. "Before I was a janitor, I was an analyst on Wall Street. A forensic analyst. I specialized in detecting hidden insolvency." He paused. "I lost everything after I exposed a major fraud case. No firm would hire a whistleblower." Amara said nothing, but her eyes sharpened. She wasn't listening like a CEO anymore. She was listening like a predator, sniffing the truth. David continued, pointing at the contract. "Tech Vision is hollow. Their valuation is inflated by almost 60%. The assets on page 14? Ghost companies. The projected revenue stream? Fabricated. The supply chain numbers? Copied from a 5-year-old quarterly report." Amara stared at him, her breath barely rising. "And if you sign this," David whispered, "your company collapses within 18 months." He waited. The ticking clock on the wall was the only sound out of Amara's fingers. Tapped once, twice, and then stopped. "Why should I believe you?" she asked. David reached into his janitor uniform pocket and placed a folded piece of paper on the table. "Because I didn't accidentally discover this. I recognize the exact numerical patterns from fraud case I once testified in. It's the same signature, the same person manipulating the books. Amara slowly unfolded the paper. Her eyes scanned the numbers. Her breathing hitched just slightly. David stepped back. "If I'm wrong," he said, "fire me. I'm just a janitor. Easy to erase." "And if you're right?" Amara murmured. "Then you're about to save 4,722 families from losing everything," he said, "including mine." That was the moment she truly looked at him. Not the uniform, not the mop, the man. Then Amara closed the folder, placed her pen beside it, and stood. "Signing is postponed," she declared. David felt his knees weaken with relief. But Amara wasn't done. She walked toward him, heels clicking sharply, and stopped only inches away. "Tonight," she said, 8 p.m., "my penthouse. Bring me everything you have." David blinked. "Penthouse. If you're telling the truth," she said coldly, "I need proof. All of it. And if I'm wrong," her lips curled faintly, "then you'll never work in this building again." She left without waiting for an answer, her entourage scrambling behind her. The longest day of his life, David returned to his janitorial cart, heart pounding. The quiet hallways felt different now. Heavier, alive with danger. He had 12 hours to prepare evidence, 12 hours, to save thousands of people, 12 hours, to risk everything he had left. He raced home after his shift, digging through the battered box of old files he'd kept hidden for years, documents from his Wall Street past, the fraud patterns he once testified against, the data models he built. He dusted off his outdated laptop, praying it still worked. IT did. For hours, he compared spreadsheets, traced falsified entries, built graphs that exposed TechVision's financial decay. He matched SIO, signatures, IP logs, and data timestamps that proved the manipulation wasn't an accident. It was engineered. Every moment, Naomi's face flickered in his mind, her tiny hand holding his, her soft voice asking, "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" He worked faster. His old skills, the ones he'd buried under years of sweeping floors, came alive again. And with each inconsistency he uncovered, the truth became clearer. TechVision wasn't just unstable. It was collapsing, and the contract Amara was moments away from signing would have destroyed the entire company. A father's reason at 6:30 p.m., David printed everything. His hands shook as he placed the documents into a worn leather folder. The same one he used back when people respected his name. That he looked around the tiny apartment. Medical bills on the counter. Naomi's drawings taped to the fridge. The old stroller in the corner. If Amara didn't believe him tonight, if she thought he was lying, if she decided a janitor stepping out of line was a threat, he could lose his job, his income, his daughter's treatment, everything. But if he stayed silent, those 4,722 families, people like him, would be destroyed too. He couldn't let that happen. He stood up, straightened his faded jacket, and whispered to himself, "Courage, David. Just one more time." At exactly 7:58 p.m., he stepped into the elevator of the Sinclair Tower penthouse. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. When the doors slid open, Amara Sinclair was already waiting, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable, her decision unknown. But the battle between truth and power had officially begun. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing a world David had never stepped into, Amara Sinclair's penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows displayed the glowing city skyline like a living painting. Marble floors, crystal lighting, a grand piano that looked untouched, like an ornament of a life too busy to be played. Amara stood near a polished glass desk, arms crossed, eyes sharp but quieter than before. She didn't welcome him with words. She simply gestured to the table. "Show me." David set the worn leather folder down. It looked embarrassingly out of place in a room where everything glittered. But when he opened it and pulled out the spreadsheets, graphs, and time-stamped logs, Amara leaned in without hesitation. For 20 minutes, the only sounds were slow inhales and the flipping of pages. TechVision's cash reserves, David said, pointing to the chart, are 74% fabricated. This, he tapped a column, is cut and paste data from 2018. And here, the supposed supplier contract signatures, digital overlays. identical pixel patterns. Amara's eyes widened slightly. She recognized the implications instantly. If this was true, the deal was catastrophic. Not just bad, fatal. Who did this? She whispered. David hesitated. Your CFO? Or someone he's protecting? The room went still. Then her phone buzzed. She ignored it. But David's phone rang at the same moment. The caller ID flashed. Child Care Center. Urgent. His stomach dropped. He stepped away, answered with a trembling breath. Mr. Brown, Naomi's fever is spiked to 104. She's vomiting. You need to come immediately. David turned pale. His hand shook so violently he nearly dropped the phone. I have to go. He grabbed his papers, frantic, but Amara stepped in front of him. Wait, David, I can't wait, he snapped, his voice cracking with panic. She's all I have. Please, then I'm coming with you. Amara said firmly. David blinked, confused. What? No, you don't have to. But she didn't let him finish. She grabbed her coat and keys. You won't make it there fast enough on your own. Let's go. 2 lives and 1 seconds later. They were in her black SUV, the city lights streaking past as Amara drove faster than David thought CEOs were allowed to. His fingers fidgeted on his knees. He wiped his eyes secretly, failing. Amara noticed. What happened to her mother? She asked gently. David swallowed hard. She passed 2 years ago. Amara's hands tightened on the wheel. Car accident, he continued, staring ahead. We were coming home from clinic. Naomi was sick that week. My wife kept telling me to rest, that she'd handle the drive. I let her. His breath hitched. She didn't make it. Naomi survived. But since then, it's just been us. Amara's expression softened in a way he had never seen, something almost fragile beneath the steel. And the job? She asked quietly. You were a top analyst. How did you end up sweeping floors? David gave a small, hollow laugh. After I exposed fraud in my old firm, they blacklisted me. No one hires a whistleblower. I needed money for Naomi's treatment. I took whatever job I could. He wiped his face with his sleeve. I never told anyone. I didn't want Naomi to grow up feeling like her father was a failure. Amara glanced at him, eyes shimmering, not with pity, but with an ache she kept deeply buried. You're not a failure, she said softly. The words nearly broke him. Teeth rushed through emergency doors. Nurses took Naomi immediately, her little body shaking with fever. David stood frozen, fists clenched, chest heaving with guilt and fear. Please let her be okay. Amara placed a hand on his shoulder, hesitant, unsure, but human. She's in the best hands now. He didn't even question why she cared. He just nodded, tears slipping down as a nurse approached moments later. We need to run tests and keep her overnight. There will be additional. I'll take care of the bill, Amara said instantly. David whipped toward her. No, I can't let you. It's not charity, she said gently. It's the least I can do. David opened his mouth, but no words came out. Only a tremble. She stepped closer. David, you saved my company tonight. Let me help save your daughter. His chest tightened, not in fear. This time, in gratitude, so fierce it hurt, that humanity behind the hours passed. Naomi stabilized. Her fever dropped. She slept peacefully under warm lights. David finally exhaled the breath he'd been holding all day. Amara sat beside him in the waiting room. Heels kicked off, hair slightly messy, completely unlike the flawless O he had seen in headlines. She seemed smaller, softer, real. Why did you help me? He asked quietly. She stared forward at the blank wall. Because I know what it feels like to lose someone. David looked at her, surprised. My mother, she said. Cancer. I inherited this company right after she passed. I buried my grief in work. I told myself I had to be ruthless or everything she built would collapse. Her voice trembled, the tiniest fracture in her armor. I've been so busy being strong, she whispered. I forgot what it feels like to be human. David didn't speak. He didn't need to. For the first time, they weren't CEO and janitor, not boss and employee. Just 2 broken, tired people, both fighting for someone they loved. Amara looked at him with a kind of softness he had never seen in her eyes. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for dismissing you all these years, for not seeing you. David shook his head. No one sees janitors. I see you now, she replied. The words hung in the air, warm and fragile. David exhaled shakily. Thank you for tonight. For everything. Amara smiled. A real smile, small but genuine. Thank you for telling the truth. Their eyes met. Two worlds colliding, not in conflict now, but in understanding. And in that quiet hospital room, with the hum of machines and Naomi breathing softly behind the curtain, a CEO found her humanity, and a janitor found someone who finally believed him. And a bond was formed, not out of power, but out of heart. Naomi woke slowly the next morning, her fever broken, her small voice hoarse but stable. David rushed to her side, brushing her hair back with trembling fingers. Relief washed through him like a warm tide. You scared me, baby, he whispered. Naomi blinked up at him. Daddy, you were here? Always, he said, kissing her forehead. Behind them, Amara stood quietly by the doorway, watching father and daughter with a softness she didn't know she possessed. For a moment, in that little hospital room, everything was still, everything was right. But peace rarely lasts. T9:12 a.m. Reality shattered. The breaking news alert blared across the hospital TV. Tech Vision files espionage charges. Janitor accused of data theft. David Brown identified as corporate spy. CFO claims evidence recovered from janitor's locker. David's heart stopped. Naomi whimpered, Daddy, what's happening? Before he could answer, hospital security walked in with two uniformed officers. Mr. Brown, one said grimly, You're under arrest. David's breath left his body. Arrest? For what? Corporate espionage. Theft of confidential financial data. Hacking proprietary systems. David shook his head wildly. No, I didn't hack anything. I told the truth. The officer stepped forward. Please turn around. Naomi reached out, voice trembling. Daddy, don't go. Tears filled David's eyes. It's okay, sweetheart. I'll fix this. I promise. But it wasn't okay. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists, his world folded in on itself. Then, the door slammed open, and in walked Amara Sinclair. Fury burned in her eyes like wildfire. That's enough, she snapped. Remove the cuffs. Now. The officers hesitated. Ma'am, we have orders from, I said now. Her voice cut like a blade, cold, lethal, unchallengeable. Behind her stood a sharp-suited woman carrying a briefcase worth more than David's yearly salary. This is Attorney Eleanor Shaw, Amara said. She runs the top corporate defense firm in the state. David Brown is coming with us. The officers exchanged glances. Nobody defied a Sinclair, not even on a bad day. And today, Amara wasn't just angry. She was at war. The cuffs were removed instantly. David's wrists were red and shaking. Amara stepped forward and steadied him with a gentle, grounding hand on his arm. Come with me, she whispered. They're trying to bury you, but not on my watch. David stared at her, breath caught somewhere between disbelief and hope. Why are they doing this? Amara's jaw tightened. Because you uncovered the truth. And the people responsible would rather destroy a janitor than let their empire burn. The scheme of Eleanor opened her briefcase in the hospital hallway, flipping out documents like sharpened blades. It's Marcus Hale, she said, the CFO. And Samuel Greer, head of acquisitions. David blinked. Samuel? But he was a snake in a tailored suit. Eleanor cut in. The two of them engineered a kickback scheme tied to the Tech Vision acquisition. She slid a paper toward him. Samuel manipulated the valuation. Marcus fabricated the financials. In return, they each received millions in offshore accounts. Amara added, and if this deal goes through, they walk away rich while my company collapses. David felt sick. So they planted evidence in my locker to frame me. Eleanor nodded. They needed a scapegoat. A nobody. Someone the world would believe stole data. Someone invisible, a janitor. David felt every insecurity of the last decade flood back, but Amara wasn't having it. She squeezed his shoulder. You're not a nobody. Not anymore. Pressure from the board, but corruption didn't go down quietly. By noon, an emergency board meeting was called. Executives flooded in, whispering, glaring, throwing suspicious glances at Amara as she marched toward the conference room with David and Eleanor at her side. As soon as she entered, voices erupted. Amara, what the hell are you doing? We need the TechVision deal signed. The market is panicking. Our stock is down 6%. You cannot postpone this any longer. And why is the janitor here? The board chairman slammed his palm on the table. You have one job, Amara. Protect this company. Sign the deal. Amara didn't flinch. David stood behind her, a quiet pillar of truth in a room filled with polished liars. Eleanor folded her arms, expression like stone. Marcus has already prepared statement drafts, an executive said. He claims David stole data and tried to sabotage the acquisition. Because he's covering his tracks, Amara replied coldly. Marcus Hale sat smugly in his seat, hands folded, expression smooth as glass. This is absurd. The evidence speaks for itself. He slid a folder forward, a folder filled with false accusations and planted proof. But Amara pushed it aside like trash. I know what you did, she said. Both of you. Samuel smirked. Careful, Sinclair. That sounds like a baseless accusation. I have evidence, she said, and a ripple moved across the board. But the chairman cut in sharply. Even if that were true, and I'm not saying it is, we still need this deal. Without it, our earnings collapse. Our investors revolt. The only responsible option is to proceed. Amara stared at him, stunned. So you want me to sign a fraudulent deal, she said slowly, just to save our quarterly report? Yes, the chairman barked. Because leadership requires sacrifice. She laughed, but without humor. Sacrifice. Her voice echoed off the walls. You want me to sacrifice 4,722 families? Destroy thousands of livelihoods? Let two corrupt executives walk free. The room went silent. Marcus shifted in his seat. The chairman leaned back. This isn't personal, Amara. This is business. Sign the deal. Or resign. A dangerous hush fell over the room. David's heart pounded. He looked at her, eyes pleading, not for himself, but for the truth. Amara stood very still. Then she turned to the board, her voice calm. Steady. I choose truth. She opened her folder and revealed everything. Every falsified financial, every fraudulent signature, every timestamp, every offshore account connected to Marcus and Samuel. She laid bare the corruption like a surgeon exposing a tumor. This is who you're protecting, she said. And this deal is their weapon. Marcus shot up, face red. This is slander. Sit down, Eleanor said sharply, or I'll have you escorted out in handcuffs. Samuel looked pale now, sweat beading at his hairline. The chairman's voice trembled. You understand this will blow up the company. Amara nodded. Then let it blow up honestly. And your title? An executive whispered. Your position? Amara smiled, a tired, real smile. What is a title if I lose my soul keeping it? She pulled out a single sheet of paper. Her resignation, gasps filled the room. I will not sign a deal built on lies, she said. Not at the cost of 4,722 families. She placed the paper on the table. And if integrity cost me my chair, then so be it. The chaos exploded instantly. Shareholders were called. Reporters flooded the lobby. Security stormed in to escort Marcus and Samuel for questioning. The TechVision deal collapsed in under an hour, setting off shockwaves across the financial world. But Amara walked through the chaos with her head high, David at her side. She was no longer CEO, but she was free, true, human. David looked at her, voice soft. You gave up everything. She shook her head. No, I finally kept something. What? My honor. Her voice cracked slightly. David felt something inside him shift. Admiration, gratitude, something deeper he couldn't yet name. For what it's worth, he said softly, you did the right thing. Amara turned to him, eyes gentler than he had ever seen. So did you. Outside, cameras flashed, reporters shouted, and the world spun unpredictably. But in the center of the storm stood two people who had chosen truth over power, and the war against corruption had only just begun. 6 months can change everything. 6 months ago, Amara Sinclair walked out of a boardroom without a title, without certainty, without the empire she had spent half her life building. 6 months ago, David Brown walked out of the police station still wearing a janitor's uniform. Unsure if anyone would ever believe the truth he risked everything to defend. And yet, here they were now. Co-founders, partners, family, the architects of a new beginning. Phoenix. The office was modest. A sunlit floor in a renovated warehouse district, but the sign on the door made David's chest warm every time he saw it. Phoenix Capital. Ethical investments for a better tomorrow. It was Amara's idea. IT was David's heartbeat. Their very first project had just been completed. A struggling manufacturing plant on the edge of closure, its 200 workers preparing for layoffs and bankruptcy. But Phoenix Capital stepped in, not with greed, but with integrity. They restructured the finances, cleaned out the hidden corruption, renegotiated fair contracts, and saved all 200 jobs. Employees cried. Reporters praised. Investors took notice. And for the first time in years, David felt proud of the man he saw in the mirror, Naomi. Naomi's laughter echoed through the office more often than the sound of printers or phones. Her cheeks were rosy, her eyes bright. Her doctors called her recovery remarkable. David called it a miracle. Sometimes Amara would finish a long meeting only to find Naomi sitting on her lap, showing her drawings or asking about grown-up work. And Amara, the once ruthless CEO who terrified half the corporate world, would drop everything to listen. Naomi had found a mother figure. Amara had found someone to love without conditions. And David, he had found both a partner and a home he never expected out of family. Quietly, gently, there was no dramatic moment, no sudden confession, no cinematic kiss, just small things. Shared late-night coffee in the office kitchen. Amara gripping David's arm when she laughed too hard, David buying her favorite tea without being asked. Naomi reaching for Amara's hand without hesitation, the family forming not through fireworks, but through warmth. Millennium Park. The heart of their new life on a crisp Sunday afternoon. The three of them walked through Millennium Park, the city alive with music and sunlight. Naomi ran ahead toward Cloud Gate, the giant mirrored sculpture that curved like a silver dream, her reflection dancing on its surface, bright and joyful. David and Amara stood slightly behind her, watching quietly. Amara spoke first. "She's growing so fast." "She's happy," David said softly. "Happier than I've seen her in years." A gentle breeze swept between them. Amara looked at David, sunlight softening her usually sharp features. "David," she hesitated, then asked, "Do you regret it?" "Regret what?" he replied. "Walking away. From the power. From the title. From the world you knew." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because of me, everything changed." David turned toward her fully. "I didn't walk away from what mattered," he said. Amara breathed in sharply, as if those words hit a place she never let anyone touch. "And what mattered?" she asked, voice fragile. He nodded toward Naomi's reflection glowing across Cloud Gate, and then toward Amara herself. "This," he said simply. "You. Her. A life built on truth, not fear." She didn't reply. She just stepped a little closer, their shoulders brushing gently. The city hummed around them. Naomi waved at her mirrored self, laughter echoing like a promise. Amara's voice, when it finally came, was soft. "Courage and integrity," she whispered. "That's what saved us." David nodded. "That's what started our new beginning." And beneath the silver sky of Chicago, reflected in the curve of Cloud Gate, three imperfect lives stood together, stronger, brighter, reborn. A janitor, a former a little girl with a second chance. Proof that truth can rebuild what lies tried to destroy. Proof that courage plus integrity can create miracles. In a world where power often wins and truth is forgotten, Amara and David proved something different. That integrity can rebuild what corruption destroys. That courage can rewrite the future of thousands. Their story isn't just about saving 4,722 families. It's about choosing what's right, even when it costs everything. As Phoenix Capital rises, one lesson remains. The bravest victories start with a single honest voice and the courage to follow it.